Connect to Success on RVN TV, 12:30, 1 o'clock on Thursdays during your lunch break, where we interview the power networkers internationally and nationally now because of the power of Zoom. I have the pleasure and the privilege of talking to Miss Siobhan Fitzpatrick. Siobhan, you are in Ireland.
I am, and it's sunny today. Thank you very much.
I don't
enjoying that.
Well, it's good. At least you don't have headaches, because I get headaches when it gets a little crazy outside.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're heading into a nice autumnal period now, so enjoying that.
Amazing. Well, I am so excited the fact that you're on the show today, because I have been wanting to connect with you for about a year now. And the reason being is because about a year ago, before all this pandemic craziness happened, I was really looking into conferences that revolved around networking, right? So different areas, because they've got business conferences and sales conferences, but there really hasn't been anything where everything gets encompassed around networking, whether it's your LinkedIn profile, your 30-second pitch, how do you follow up, what tools to use, things like that. And I Googled, and your networking summit came up as the only option, the only viable option on the internet. So I stalked you a little bit on LinkedIn, and I got a chance to connect, and then, you know, life happens and both of us weren't able to kind of cross paths. We then crossed again when I had a pleasure of communicating and speaking with a networking group in Cork, Ireland. Yeah. And then we got introduced with a referral by somebody else who's in that group that I had a conversation with. So it was meant to be, and I'm so glad that you're here today.
Thank you. It is funny, the networking summit happened on the 21st of September last year. Yeah. So we've just passed our year milestone, and while the intent was not to have that event until February 2021 this time around, just for various clashes of other events, the question mark, who knew that we'd see ourselves in this volatile and crazy period? But it does raise the question of networking in a virtual space. So there's lots of things that have happened, not least the launch of my new business as well.
So let's talk about that, the launching of your new business. So before we go into that business, though, can you tell people about why you decided to start the networking summit and then go into the networking hub, and just how it kind of all came together?
Sure, thank you for asking.
Sure.
So the networking summit came about from my experience of returning to Ireland. So I lived in New York for 7 years, and I moved to England, and I lived in London for the best part of 20 years.
Wow.
So when moving back to Ireland back in 2015, it was like moving to a brand new country. So I do what I do, and I got out and I networked. And while I had this similar experience in both the UK and the US, I was struck quite strongly by it here in Ireland, and that was, I seem to have stepped back into the 80s style of networking. You know, people talking at you, people selling to you, people hiding in the corner on their phones, pretending to be busy and didn't want to, you know, interact with anybody at events. Yeah, I know, it was quite, and it broke my heart. It was more around they're missing opportunities. The other thing too was I was meeting the same people, the same business people, less women than men at these events. And I thought, surely to God, I know that there's, you know, Ireland has the majority of business out there are SMEs. And I was not meeting them at these networking events. And I asked the question why. And I came to the resolution that they weren't finding the right networks. They didn't know how to network effectively. They weren't getting the results that they ultimately thought they should get from networking, or they had the same experiences as I did, so they just left it. So I saw a gap in the market where I wanted to bring some education and skill sets in a fun, energetic, friendly way, that when they left the networking summit, they had upskilled themselves, but also they had made amazing connections and had lots of fun along the way. Because networking is fun.
Absolutely.
If you do it right.
If you do it right, if you do it strategically. I think that people usually put too much pressure on the idea of networking, right? You go into a conversation thinking that you have to sell somebody, but nobody's buying. We had talked about this before.
Yeah.
What I love about what you did, though, is that you found a need and you fixed it. right? Which is essentially, I don't know about you, but I know you talk to a ton of business owners all the time. How many times have they called you up and said, oh, I just decided to start this? I'm like, but is there a problem that you're fixing? Like, is there something that you're doing to make it work? Or are you just kind of, flying by the seat of your pants, right? And so.
It's the big why.
Why? Right, you're setting yourself up for failure. So the networking summit was so interesting to me because you did hit on all of those great topics. But what was interesting in the way that you were talking about how you kind of went back to the 80s, right? You went back and you saw everybody kind of not really networking at the same pace as somebody would be in London or in New York.
Sure.
But there's no networking summit or conference in the States, and we network the most effectively. And then you brought it to Ireland. So I just
I'd like to think I have a global mindset, having had the privilege of living abroad, but also having worked. I was in the events industry and traveled the world. So I've got a good role for different cultures and different, I guess, collection of business minds. And what I wanted for the networking summit, albeit that it started in Ireland, and what a great place to start. We are an amazing country. I did, with intent, want to develop this into an international event. Now, we had people travel over from Canada, from Europe, to attend the event the last couple of years. And in a way, COVID is giving me an opportunity to open the doors to an international audience without anybody having to cause any CO2 emissions and all of that.
I agree.
So we're working on that, the next one.
So are you going to make it virtual, the next one?
Look, if it's not totally virtual with all that's going on with COVID, it will certainly be a hybrid.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Well, please let me know because I'd love to share it.
You're first on the list.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I just, so tell me more about how COVID and how everything going virtual has changed your own business, and what are you doing now?
So it massively changed my business. I was the director for Women in Business Network Ireland, which was a UK franchise female network, which I brought over to Ireland when I returned in 2015. And that had expanded to 13 groups across 7 counties. We had 150 members. It was really successful. Unfortunately, with Brexit and COVID, there was a lot of challenges. So unfortunately, that business finished in May. However, the time that COVID gave me enabled me to look at what else is happening and how can I be a better fit for what's out there and what's needed. So out of that was born the Networking Hub, which is a parent company for 3 silos. The Networking Summit being the educational annual event that we do. We have the Network Academy, which is an educational platform with courses and workshops around networking and in different guises and levels for what people need. And then we have the network, which is a membership-based virtual network for business owners and developers. So at the moment, our network covers business people in Ireland, but again, I'm looking to expand that beyond for those that are looking to expand their network to international audiences where they can cross-cultural communicate, connect, and collaborate. There are 3 pillars.
Amazing. And I think that, to your point, COVID has given us the opportunity, one, for you and I to connect. And I found it to be so, with the time that you got back working on your business instead of in it, right? You saw the potential that there was to grow the network internationally and really collaborate more often than anything else. Especially, go ahead.
So, I'm sorry, I was going to say this, I'm sure for every business that got locked into their house and for a period of time, it made them think about how they were using their time. One of the key areas was time. Mm-hmm. I'm sure every single person on this planet has used the phrase at one stage or another, I just don't have enough time. COVID gave us, the one gift it did give us was time. Mm-hmm. So what were we going to use that time for? And I think, well, I can only talk about my own circumstance. There was a moment of time that was rabbit in headlights, and everybody can react in different ways, but out of that time, allowing me to dissect and review I started to get smarter about what I did and looked at what was needed. So we can get on that hamster wheel and just work without really taking time to what you and I would always talk about, I'm sure, to our respective audiences. Your networking needs time.
Yes.
It needs to be looked at. It needs to be reevaluated and reviewed regularly.
Mm-hmm.
So much the same as I did with my business. I would do the same with my
absolutely.
network.
I mean, you hit on something that's so important, right? Being able to review the network that you have on a daily basis and seeing how it's giving you value, but how are you giving it value? How are you nurturing it? How are you educating the audience that you have the pleasure and the privilege to have? But also you have a responsibility, right? So if you're running a network, or if you and I network professionally for a living, that's all we do. We do that, and then we run other industries. We have different pillars that tie into. I have a show. It ties into the ultimate goal, which is to educate. And I think that we have a responsibility in that space to be able to work with other groups, work with other professionals to educate in the best practices, so that way they do save that time. And networking doesn't feel so daunting. Where do you think, in your opinion, where do you think networking is going in Ireland? Like, if you can use your gut and see what the next few months or even the next year and a half look like, what would you think it would look like in the networking space?
I think there's big changes. They're happening. We're in a mini lockdown again here in Ireland. So we've just been only yesterday we were told that as of midnight tonight we go into full level 3 lockdown for the country. And there is the threat of us going back into full lockdown if our numbers don't improve. So what does that mean for businesses and for networking specifically, as you asked? It is how are we conducting our networking? So prior we would have had opportune moments to meet people at live events or at meetings, or a chance bumping into somebody at a coffee station at a conference. There are all of those periods of time where we had the opportunity to network physically, and now we don't. So there's more of a conscious effort required to look at how can I meet my potential customer? How can I meet with the people that I would have regularly hung out with or caught up with at industry events, at social events? There's all different platter of opportunities. So now you have to make a conscious effort. So I'm going to say there's a return. There will be a return to the good old picking up the phone. People are fed up with Zoom. You know, we've got Zoom fatigue, which is a phrase that's been used a lot. But I'm writing more letters. I'm sending more personalized cards to people to let them know that I'm thinking about them and that I remember at this period of time, X, Y, Z. Keeping in touch with your network is vital. So I see a renewed, callback to how we would have kept in touch with our network prior to the mobile phone, prior to technology, the Zoom, but it's that giving that personal touch, and that's what's important. I also see us getting a little bit more smarter about how we're using our time and smarter about who we're networking with.
Right.
So those that would have gone to a networking event and said, well, I'll just see who I meet or bump into. People have to get strategic. You have to know why you're networking. You have to have a goal before you set out to do your networking. But also you have to work on the network. If you meet somebody, are you following up? How regularly are you following up? And what are you doing for them? Are you connecting them to others? Are you paying it forward? There's all of that. So I think there's going to be a renewed review, if I can put it like that, on people's activity on their network. Amazing. They mightn't phrase it as being strategic about their networking, but I think they will have to.
Oh, that's great advice, and I love your insight into that. When we come back, we're going to talk to Siobhan more about her tactical tips and practical takeaways in networking, her top tips, and make sure you stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed within their lifetime. RVN TV is asking for your support for breast cancer survivors and those currently battling the disease. You can do this by wearing pink ribbons or clothing throughout the month of October. Early detection and treatment is crucial, and we at RVN TV encourage all women to consider undergoing breast clinical exams and mammograms. The fight against breast cancer needs your support.
Boardwalks built for fun. Legendary rock and roll clubs.
This is how we do it. Hippity hop.
Casinos by the ocean.
Hippity hop.
Now that's New Jersey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Connect to Success. Welcome back from the break. We're here with Miss Siobhan Fitzpatrick, who is all the way out in Ireland. She's a subject matter expert in networking, and she runs the Networking Hub as well as the Networking Summit, among the many pillars of things that she works on. I'm so thrilled for you to be here. The fact that we're connecting virtually has been just an extraordinary experience, and you and I have been collaborating and talking for the last few weeks, and I'm excited to see what January comes for us, and we're going to figure out a way to get this summit going and making it work. So I'm thrilled. I think that you are fantastic. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, not just to boost your ego because I love you, but more so because I think that your experience is so interesting, which is why you're so successful. So you've been able to see different cultures, different areas of different networking styles. You were in London, you were in New York, you were in Ireland. I mean, you've seen and you've had experiences in different areas that showcase different networking styles, activities, what is acceptable, and been able to put all of that together into a really profound, teachable activity. So for someone, I've only been doing this for 3 years, so you are definitely the expert in this area. I am working my way out of being a junior and do a senior until next year. So in that space, can you please, I'm going to ask you two questions, it's a two-part question. What advice would you give yourself that you know now when you first started networking? And then what advice would you give somebody who is an avid networker, but that could really hone in on some really good tactical tips? So pretty much, what would you say to yourself in the very beginning? And then what advice would you give somebody who is a very, very active networker that just needs to look at things differently?
Oh, so two very good questions. What advice would I give myself if I knew what I know today?
Mm-hmm.
I guess it would be kind to myself, and not put the pressure that I did on myself to get what I needed to get. I think back when I started networking, and actually New York was probably my first real challenge at how to build a network. I moved to the USA knowing one person, just one person. And I went from knowing that one person to not having a job, to not having a place to live. And after 7 years, came away as the international planner for MasterCard International, and having an amazing network of multicultural individuals and connections. So what I did was focus an awful lot on my goals and what I wanted and how I was going to get there. Who could I get the support from? Was I taking care of my network? I guess it is to be mindful of your network. And it took me a while to be aware of that. I was very fortunate to achieve what I've achieved, but I do think it takes time and effort. And half the thing that you would give, advice that you give yourself is, more to save time. If I knew what I knew, I would have got there quicker. But I don't disregard the lessons I learned in that period of time, and they're all very valuable.
What kind of lessons do you think what is the one lesson that you think that sticks with you today, that you always hear in the back of your head? I know I'm throwing you some curveballs here, but I think...
Sorry?
I know I'm throwing you some curveballs here, but...
No, listen, that's fine. I've got to think on my feet. What is the thing that stays in the back of my head? Well, look, it's going to be something my father said to me. As much as he sat on my bed on the night before I moved to New York and said, "You don't have to go," for the fear that was in me going, not knowing anybody or just knowing the one person. But the one thing he followed up with that was, "You can do it. You can do whatever you want. You can." And that sticks with me, and he's no longer with us, so I'm delighted to have that message that he gives me every single time. And it has helped me in starting my own business, in doing everything I've done. I mean, I just made a trip to the Arctic this year, right before COVID, for a charity. We trekked in the Arctic, and again, there was that phrase, "You can do it." And I can tell you, on the last piece of that challenge, I doubted that I actually could do it. But I had his voice in my head that said, "You can do it." So whatever it is you want to do, no excuses. You can do it.
It's so important, though, to have that in your head, to have something that drives you, because I'm sure you know, like, to your point, you've got people who are avoiding conversations at events, who are not going to events, who are not going to Zoom calls, who are too fearful of actually showcasing their skill sets and providing value. But if you have that moment in your head that drives you to succeed and gives a little extra oomph, I think is something that every networker, anybody that's trying to get into networking, should absolutely have. So that's fantastic advice.
Thank you. It's the fear is bigger than the task itself or the action itself.
Right.
And we give the fear too much energy and too much weight. So when you break down that fear, why am I? I think of the people who stand in the corner and are so fearful of actually introducing themselves to somebody or asking. So Ashley reached out to me, I'll tell your audience, through LinkedIn, because she was connected to a speaker on my stage last year at the Networking Summit. And John Murray said, you've got to connect with Ashley. She's based out in the States. So if you don't ask, you don't get. I also had the wonderful Kingsley Aiken speak on the stage. And again, I had reached out, having seen him at another event, reached out to him and said, "You've time for a coffee?" And he said, yes. I actually took a week to do that because of the fear of asking this man, who happens to be the most amazing, kindest, gentlest person. So you've got to just say it. I can do it. Do it.
And the ask, can you go more into the ask, because that is an extremely important area to kind of like nitpick a little bit, because there's a difference between a 50-cent ask and a $50 ask, right? The $50 ask is the bigger ask. Like, hey, is there anybody that you think that could utilize my services? That's a big ask, because that person that you're asking now has to go through the Excel file in their head to be able to filter through who they think might be a good introduction for you. Or, hey, would you mind dropping $10,000 on a sponsorship? Like, that's a big ask. But a 50-cent ask is saying, would you like to have coffee? Can we do a 15-minute introduction call? I would love for you to share this status update of like this article that I wrote. That's a quick, time is also a huge factor in that, and that is a quick way of being able to still give value or ask for that value. But what you did was that you asked for a coffee, for a bigger ask later on, but you were building the know, the like, and the trust factor. So
I like to equate this to your bank account. You would never go into your bank and say, "I want to take out a 10 grand loan," when you haven't even registered with the bank, when you don't have an account with the bank. So think about your network in a similar way. You have to consider that you put in deposits or you lodge money in, that you earn credit. So when you put a deposit in, like your 50 cents coffee, or that time you're spending with somebody, or you've reached out to them to connect them, that's a deposit. And you've got to keep working those deposits. You have to give more. My belief is give before you ask for anything. Build up your credit with the individual, because when you actually need it, that's when you can say, I can withdraw from my account because I have built this relationship up, and it's about understanding, are they a connection? Are they a warm connection? Do you have a good relationship? Would they, if you call them, would they know who you were? And then the true friend, that person where you have that meaty, solid rapport with, they're the person that you would call on a Sunday, and they pick up their mobile and they'd say, oh, Siobhan, great to hear from you. Absolutely, I can help here, because you've earned that.
That is, and that's it. You gotta earn it. You have to earn it. You have to give, and then give some more, and then you gotta earn the respect and earn the right to ask.
Yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
I love that. Maybe that's an Irish thing, because my father taught me that growing up. He goes, you deserve nothing, you earn it. And I was like, okay, and that's what I lived my entire life. So I think that's why you and I are so the same person. So going back to the other question, what advice would you give to an avid networker that is, maybe their practices are running a little stale? What advice would you give them?
Oh, I would say take a step back and analyze their network. It's a really healthy exercise to do, and that is get your contacts, whether they're in LinkedIn, whether they're in your CRM system, whether they're in your phone book, and have a look at what action or activity has been happening with these people. Put them into your pods of where they should be. I mean, oftentimes we have a network that is really maybe a little dry. It's not active. You're not putting energy into it. They're not putting energy into it. So maybe you don't need them. And that's not being cruel. That's just being strategic.
Yeah.
So take a look at what you've got and see where you need to put your energy and effort, and see what matches with the goals that you're aiming for, and then start to get back in touch with people and say hello and buy them that cup of coffee.
Perfect. Ms. Siobhan, please do me a favor and look directly into the camera that you've been looking at, because we are done. Please tell people how they can find you and contact you.
You can contact me by either siobhan.fitz@me.com. That's my email address. Take a look at the Networking Summit website to see what we've done, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one next year.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Siobhan. Thank you, everybody, for watching Connect to Success, where we talk to the power networkers all over the country and all over the world now. I am thrilled to have met Ms. Siobhan Fitzpatrick. If you'd like to get in touch with her, please do. She is one of the top networkers in the world, I believe, and I am so thrilled to be able to connect with her and learn, and we collaborate. I always talk about collaborating like we're all, in the same sandbox, which is building different castles. And so what you do is you connect, you collaborate, you work together, and that's how you make a strong network of not just an audience, but an army. So thank you very much for watching. We will see you next week.